more things they can access if they're on the original page.
Okay, cool.
They make you choose one. I don't know why they do that. Okay, so it should be up there now.
Yep.
I'm just waiting for the. So we turned on Periscope and Twitch. We're seeing what that's doing.
So I'm just going to share it.
Yeah, share it out. Share it out, and let's see what we got. 14 people so far. Let's see, they're coming. We're gonna play a different intro. We'll be back in a second.
Okay. Cool.
Allow yourself to be in the funk. Experience the funk. Be there in the funk. Acknowledge the funk. Thank the funk. Be there in the funk. Experience the funk. Acknowledge the funk. Thank the funk. It's like the energy doesn't create funkiness.
I have to thank. Oh, that's weird. That thing turned off by itself. How strange. It's never done that before. I have to thank our friend from. I forgot who put it together. Somebody who follows you. And I can't remember his name. I feel bad. I should remember his name. But anyway, yeah, we have different people who are sending in different creations. Somebody did a 80s rap thing, and I put it out there. Marina's husband, beautiful guy. Yeah, this is what it's all about. It's good to see you, Franco. I know we talked.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
I think I've got everything covered on my end. Make sure everybody's watching. Yeah, that looks good. All right. Well, now we're ready to play.
Yeah. So we've been pretty consistent, you and I. God, going back to what? Going back to, I think, late 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And then we kind of were doing our own thing for a few weeks. Of course, we got tied up in Sedona, and just a lot of stuff was going on. We went through a transition because we had somebody assisting us on the scheduling while Morgan's stuff was blowing up. And yeah, but here we are, and you've covered a lot of ground. I mean, everyone knows that you're, what you're putting out. I think I counted 75 different videos in 45 or 46 sessions. And obviously some of them are multiple video, but I think there's probably a collective 200 hours in there with the Expanding Consciousness series that you're doing.
Yeah, it's called Advancing Consciousness series.
Advancing.
Yeah.
Advancing. What did I say? Did I say?
Expanding.
Oh, expanding.
Well, it's expanding too, but it's really advancing consciousness.
Advancing consciousness.
Yeah.
Which
it's available on several platforms. It's on YouTube under the same name. It's under Vimeo, the same name. It's we have a Facebook group called Advancing Consciousness series also. And of course, then it's on my two pages, my public page and my private or what you call profile page.
Yeah.
But we are just launching, and the first one should go out Wednesday of our Advancing Consciousness podcast.
Wow.
So that is also going to be available on all of the podcast platforms like iTunes and Spotify and all the other stuff. But it's also going to be available in video format on YouTube under Advancing Consciousness Podcast. And of course, it's going to be under Vimeo. But we're also, Kimberly's just working on it now with my son there to sort out a group page called also Advancing Consciousness Podcast on Facebook. So there's going to be several places for that. And sorry for the pitch, but really that's going to be run daily, 7 days a week. And they're going to be shorter. And we're going to talk about all these various topics that come up. And the topics are a lot to do with what's really going on. I will also be addressing people's questions. There'll be odd occasions I will be inviting people to come online also to participate in a discussion similar to what we're having. That won't be as often, but once in a while we will do that. There's a few people that sometimes I don't mind having a chat with because we're on kind of the same page with understanding, and I like the different viewpoints that people offer, because that way it kind of broadens the thing. This is why I love talking to you too, because you're not only on the same page, but at the same time, you got your viewpoint from it too, from your experience, and we all have different experiences, and all of it is absolutely so freaking amazing. And so here we are. So I just wanted to let people know that the first one will be going out on Wednesday. I've already prepared 21 episodes.
Wow.
Ahead of time, so they'll be just going out one per day, and of course I'll be building more on that as we go along. But I needed to get it prepared. We ran into some glitches and stuff, but we sorted all of that out, and we're finally ready to rock and roll. And so that's great. And it's been a little while since we last connected, so this is really thrilling for me to play with you again.
Yeah. I just got to say too, some people call me the hardest working person in soul business, but I think you actually are the one that has done more, because, man, every time you don't even take a breath, man. I mean, you're just like you're blowing and going, like they say in Texas, down the oil field vernacular. Yeah, you've been I've caught some of the videos. I went through probably around 15 of them, off and on, and a lot of topics, and like you were talking about, what's really going on right now. I noticed you just were talking about the political arena recently.
Yes.
I think I'd like to start there, and the reason is because one of the things, and I haven't talked to you about this, but one of the things I noticed, and everyone's noticed, as this election's drawn nearer, as the years gone by, and everything else has been happening, there's again, everybody's experience is relevant. We're not throwing rocks at anybody. We're just actually trying to advance our consciousness by these discussions. But there's been I guess some polarization. Is the only way I could put it. Some favoritism, maybe, is another way. Holding fast to one side of the spectrum in terms of duality, in terms of polarity. And the reason I bring it up is because there are energies presenting themselves as the beautiful, eternal beloved mirrors that they are. And I'm sure we provide the same thing for them in just a different way. And what I'm talking about is attributing through the intel that they're receiving, that the universe matches or resonates with what I could only deem as a prejudicial or bias from a human level. In other words, I'm channeling such and such, and they're telling me that so-and-so is a good person, and so-and-so is not a good person, and this political party is okay, but that one's not okay. And my question is this: like, I know from my own experience that you still have to discern from the information that you receive and the connections you make in the non-physical. And I, for myself, and I think many other people, based on what I'm seeing, that's gotten clearer and clearer as time's gone on. This couple that was just on a minute ago, this beautiful couple, the woman said, when you're receiving information, I never heard this, I loved it. She said, when you're receiving information, it's good information if it is positive and if it provides you with more choices. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good barometer, pretty good litmus test. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Why does that occur? Are there non-physical energies that are carrying certain biases and prejudices? Are those to be deemed as evil and stay away from them? Are they just aspects of ourselves furthering our open-mindedness, furthering our advancement of our consciousness? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to push this a little bit, and we're going to play with this because it's an excellent topic, and what you've just presented is something that is of a very great interest to people. And it also creates a lot of different confusions and so forth with people. So first thing we have to understand, from a higher perspective, from any level of perspective that you look at, there is no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. There's no evil and good. there are different role players transmitting different agendas and directions and opportunities and options and so forth. They may work with a more dimmer or reduced spectrum of light and a lower vibration. Now, all of it, no matter what is playing out, is there to assist us to become more empowered to actually access ourselves. Now, the game in the political stuff that's playing out right now, the first thing we want to do is we want to look at it that these are just playmates playing out particular roles. Now, what's the purpose of the role? Now, a lot of people get caught up in the idea that if I choose one or choose the other, there's going to be a better world and one's going to be a worse world. And, I have to look at their character and I have to look at those other parts of it. What we're doing is we're receiving two opportunities, two directional points that we can choose. And we have it not only personally, but also on a collective scale. Which direction are we going to take? Now, both directions, regardless how we look at it, will end up at the same point. However, what are the two rides going to look like? Now, if we feel that somehow that the answer is one party over another, one individual over another, then we are still, utilizing that unconscious state. We're still looking at the polarity world, which, most of us are to some degree or another, and some are really deep into it. Now, with that all playing out, one of the concerns that came up, well, how about if this individual comes in versus that individual? Are we like doomed? Is evolution's going to stop? Is advancement going to stop? Is the plan of the beings that are working with us are going to be dwarfed or something of that nature? Well, no. However, one has a higher preference and is more utilized to bring forth one particular experience that is a little bit more direct. One has much more what we call scenic route. Okay, but one scenic route will be more polarized, more intensified energetically, and so forth, versus the other. That's the only thing. Yeah. Now, if you look at both parties, you're going to notice that neither one at this point in time is 100% the direction that we feel deep inside we want to go into. However, they're both bridges. They're both bridges. One bridge is more colorful than the other. One's more direct. One is more supported in one way or another. However, it's not, the end of that. Now, the thing is, when it comes to discernment, when it comes to seeing the options, you say, okay, here's the options. Which one do I choose? Well, as we talked about it a few days ago, is that if we have judgment, preconceived ideas, if we're still running under perceptions and programs that this is bad and that's bad, this is evil and that's evil, that person is, this or that person is that, what happens is several things. And I know you realize this, and many other people online, I'm sure, will realize this also, is that when that is taking place, you're not accessing a higher aspect of yourself at all. You're basically going into the ego world. In the ego world, the world of polarity, world of judgment, the world of comparison, the world of, I got to make one choice or the other and I can screw up, right? You're not seeing for what it is. So one of the things I found with people is that if they have already a hatred for somebody, for example, one party, and, well, I'm not going to choose that because I hate that person, whatever it is, and I'm going to go the other way. Well, are you actually looking at the big picture there and where the journey is going to take you? So this is where you have to drop all judgment. You have to drop all of your preconceived ideas. Now, we have to understand one of the key things here. Judgment and any perceived concept or idea, most cases, if not all, is, as long as it's polarized, it's not ours. It's from the inverted matrix, inverted 3D, and it is the programming that's being generated within ourselves. So we're actually not a free agent. We're not in our sovereign state, even though we are. We're choosing to become connected to what we've been conditioned to believe, conditioned to respond, conditioned to compare and judge and so forth. And this is where it limits us. And this goes across the board. Forget about even the political part. A lot of times people say, how do I know I'm talking to my higher self or whatever, like you said? Well, or even the messages that we're receiving. Well, first of all, it's not only just judgment. Don't say, okay, look at this. That person or that individual or that channeling coming through supersedes me. That does the same thing. You're actually going from your higher aspect of yourself and you're now going into giving that to someone else. Yeah. Like what we're doing right now, we're sharing information, we're sharing content. Well, it's not about anybody giving themselves to what is being shared here, even though it has, intense truth to it, but it's up to you to see if it actually resonates, it feels good to you, it lightens you up, because really this information is really to bring you, which is your own self doing this, and this is everybody, to your own higher state of being. That is the purpose, nothing else. The purpose is to ignite who you are in a powerful way, because we are. And this is the realization that we've lost and we're starting to regain. See, the thing is, you come here as a powerful being, and part of playing in the game, you kind of lose that part of it. Now, we didn't have to, but we did, because it would be difficult to play the game. Now, of course, now it's much more supportive because of everything else that's going on at this time. But at the same time, it was very instrumental for us to go into that unconscious state. So the thing is, it's always about dropping any polarization, any judgment, and any putting on a pedestal anybody or anything, right? Because a lot of people get caught up in the fact, oh, I'm channeling this, so this came from whatever. Well, that has to come in for you to utilize to stimulate something. But if it stimulates polarity, if it stimulates, emotional charges, if it stimulates a fact of going, oh, that's better, that's right, say, yeah, okay, that resonates with me. How do I use it? Okay. Yeah. That way, because a lot of times the channeled information, for example, I'm just using that as an example, may have certain levels of nuggets that you can utilize as your own thing, but it has to be yours. It's not where I take it for what it is and then I'm going to replicate that. Some of it is going to come in and it's going to trigger such a state of you that in one way or another, it's bringing forth a deeper understanding. And this is the thing. So what's happening with back to the political game, and there's more to talk about that because I think we need to clarify that part of it. The two individual role streams and the two parties, whatever you want to call it, and this is mainly to do with the U.S., but the thing is, whatever happens in the U.S. is reflected throughout the whole planet because it's just linked that way, and it's the role that it plays out. As you can see, the point right now, very powerfully, is the fact that the extreme polarity, the extreme, what you can call insanity, non-rationality, the acting of going one way or another is there very purposefully for us to kind of wake us up from this sleep state, this locked up state where we accepted all that's coming in as this is the way life is, and we got to play it on that. The other thing is, many of us have given ourselves to particular leaders, particular individuals, and saying they are going to create and shape my world or our world, if you want to call it that. Well, that's a disempowered state. In fact, they are not. If they play a representative role, it has to match you and the way you want to present it. So this is the thing is, it's showing the incapability. It's showing the fact is that are they a representative of me? Or do I shape my world? Do I choose to already project it? Now, of course, you have to go to that higher state, and that means we got to drop the ideas of one being one or the other, or the programmed condition. Because even when people talk about, I want to have my ideal world, my ideal life, whose life is it? Is it a concocted idea that's definitely coming from the inverted matrix? Is it coming from the inverted 3D, 2D state? Is it all ego-based? Or is it truly, truly, truly what you see your world looking like? Now, the other thing is, when we see that, we can't put barriers and limits, because even if you can't stretch it as far right this very moment, you can already create the opening to be stretched in that way. So people say, well, you have to be rational. Do I have to kind of create a world that, matches closer to what it is now, just a little tweak? No, push it to the extreme where you're seeing a world of peace. You're seeing a world where you're actually playing with each other. There's no requirement for monetary, no requirement for sacrifice, suffering, struggle, survival, or any of that nature. In fact, how do you see it where you have access to much more? And this goes beyond the monetary stuff, not even looking at that, but, moving around and enjoying each other and whatever else, and playing on different playgrounds, meaning, different parts of the world and so forth, whatever you see. Because the thing is, that world is already in your heart. That world is already built into you, and it's actually refining and expanding. So use your imagination, your creativity, because when you're imagining, you're tapping into all these resources in your right brain, you're streaming into your left brain, and you're already transmitting it out. So even if the reflection around you is not changing 100% on the spot, it already starts to change, but you're also streaming this throughout the whole planet, that others are receiving it, and then it's all merging to already start to create the change. Yeah. Now, what we are experiencing currently, as intense as it is, this is a creation that we did together, because it was our choice to actually upgrade everything that we're upgrading right now, because we're done with this journey, and we're done with the old way of playing the game. And this is why all of this is playing out. And does it seem insane? Yeah, it can seem really, really colorful, really, really polarized, very, very intense, and all of that stuff. But at the same time, that's the wake-up call. That's the breaking out of that, locked up state that we've been in. The thing is, if it's not pushed to the max, we get complacent, and we have been complacent for a very long time. Now people are starting to feel the fire under their butt. They're starting to feel antsy, whatever it is, because they're wanting to change. But at the same time, it's like, little baby steps. Well, the shoving that's happening right now is pushing us to even go further. So the answer, is it one or the other? No, yeah. But one has a higher preference, because that bridge is shorter, that bridge is more efficient, that bridge is being supported. But then at the same time, that bridge ends, and then it's a whole different system that does not require and will not have governmental rule makers or anything of that nature. We're talking about councils. We're talking about, individuals that have access, higher consciousness within themselves, that will work together to look at what people really need, not the idea that we need to have this. That is already all coming from the inverted matrix and inverted 3D.
So so just as there is no higher path in terms of who's literally elected, there's also no right path or higher path in terms of what we choose, because as you said, we're all choosing what happens. We're all part of that decision making, and we've talked about this on the previous shows. But what I was going to say is there's not. Let me rephrase it. When we talked the other day, you went into an explanation that was very, very to the point, which was I think you said something to the effect of the galactic's views, where you're getting your information, the views on one or the other or on each was semi-specific. You had some specific information, and the word that jumped out at me, because I think it was, if it ends up being the blue path, let's just say, versus the red path, that's still going to work too, because like you said, we're going to get back to the same place. But the word that jumped out to me was transparency. That regardless of which path is chosen by the collective, that the level of transparency will continue to expand along with telepathy and everything else, and we will see everything for what it is. Now, one path, let's just be frank about it, the red path, seems to be very blunt and direct, at least on the surface. The other path, smoke and mirrors, regardless, there's probably the level of both in each of them. Regardless, there's going to be a continuing expansion of transparency that's going to serve us to, continue to go into ourselves. And as a result of that as well, we're going to, I would assume, it only makes sense that as it's more transparent, we're going to see what's not real by any and all parties involved. So maybe the allegiances will diminish because of the further transparency. But could you speak to this a little bit?
Yeah. So the thing is, if you're going, for example, the red, if you're going in that direction at this point in time, let me make it very clear. The 2021 is about disclosure, transparency. Now, what is disclosure? Disclosure is showing us the different operating systems behind that we have believed as something that is actually as part of life, as a truth, as a way of being. For example, we're talking about, it's going to show what's really been playing out on different levels of leadership, different levels of control structures. It will expose the different controllers from different viewpoints. But it also discloses the media, discloses the monetary system, it discloses the medical system, it discloses the educational system, it discloses a lot of those, and that's what the intent was. Now, the point of the disclosure is to get us to realize it and not to become a victim and saying, oh my God, this is the world is ending, type of thing, or that, we've been screwed over or something of that nature. It's not about that. It's showing, oh, this is what we played with. This is what we've gone into. Okay, now we can actually see that all the illusionary game that we played wasn't really quite the intent that it was seeming on the surface. So that going into that, the one side will work with the various beings and so forth, which they are. I mean, the beings work with both anyways, because you have to understand the other side is acting out in such a fashion so that people actually realize that, hey, what are we doing? We're putting our faith and our whatever you want to call it into this other part. So that was the first thing that came up, was okay, now that will be individuals coming together, showing it. It's going to shake us up. And when I say shake it up, some people say, yeah, okay, great. Finally, more people are looking at it, because the disclosure stuff has been started a long time ago. However, the denial, the restrictions, the resistance, the idea of going, no, that's insane, can't be, whatever, because this is the way, we are as humans, even the idea of what we are. And when I say that, I'm talking about, we have an idea and a belief system that the human condition is this, the human nature is this, but it's not. If we're going to go the other side, say the blue, for example, at this point in time, the disclosure is still going to take place, but it's different. This disclosure will be the experientially much more intense, to the degree where it's going to show that things will come in and crush us even further, say, okay, dictatorship or whatever you want to call it, to the point we go, hey, no, we're not accepting this, forget it. And then it starts to crumble in a different way. So one is more intensified experience. The other one is actually a little bit more open and is just showing it. We'll still have a certain reaction, but the other one we have to break through. So that's the thing. And that's why I was saying, no matter which way we go, we end up at the same place. There is a preference, and the preference has already been made by us collectively, saying, hey, we prefer this one because that type of exposure is already, or disclosure has already been showing up. It's just going to be so in the face for the people that have been in denial. And all of us, to some degree, have a certain level of denial, and some much more. And I'm sure you have seen it, Todd, that, some of the people that you have interacted with that would go, it's crazy, I don't want to know anything about this stuff, or we even think that you're nuts, are now, coming more and more forward and saying, wow, maybe some of the stuff you've been saying or whatever it is has some merits to it. It does make sense, and I'm starting to see it. So this is the thing, is that we're coming to the point right now where all of this is the option that we're making. Now, the thing is, even the dance that's happening right now, this has been leading us more and more. The two sides and the polarity part of it has been showing more and more, really not the fact of one's better than the other. It's more like, wait a minute, we have to get empowered. We need to step into it. We are actually, it's our world. We're the ones that's choosing how to play it. And we need to go more on to that. And so this is why it's being played out in that fashion and more intense. Now, the other beauty of it, there's more people aware of what's going on. Okay. Like, for example, the suppression in what we call social media, right? That's been happening for a while. However, most people never give credence to it, never looked at it and said, oh, I did part of Big Brother, or whatever you want to call it, as what people label it. But now, all of a sudden, they're acting out to a point. That's disclosure, because it's so prevalent. So it's like, hey, wait a minute. Why are they dictating what we can see, what we get to see or don't see? When did they become authoritative? When did they become the master of whatever's going on? And here we are, people like yourselves and others around, and myself, that are putting content out there, and all of a sudden it's not being shared, or it's being streamed, reduced, or anything of that nature. So what's happening? It's like, oh, wait a minute. There is suppression. There is control. Yeah. So it's really stimulating people to kind of become more aware of it, so that they can say, okay. Yeah. And this is why it's playing out. The insanity, or what we can call the intensity, is the obvious way it's coming to our face, is really just to stimulate us so that we don't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
Not that we have to fight it, but to see really what the game is, and then we start to shape it from there.
Well, it's interesting too, because the rationale of the plausible denials are running out of steam, so that transparency is well, I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't matter what route we take. I almost wanted to say one path is more easy and graceful and the other one is more bumpy, but that would just depend on who you're asking, really, wouldn't it? I mean, I might look at something and not be comfortable with it, and you might look at the same thing and be very happy with it, so that there's just so many different elements. You talk about 2021, which totally fits, being the disclosure, transparency, they go together. We're about to have David Icon, and I'm excited, like I told you in the conversation we had, because I feel like the time is right to bridge what we call the light worker circles and the conspiracy/disclosure circles. We start to have a common conversation, which is going to have to include both the elements of the big elephants in the room, and also the element of the iron salt, like the sovereignty that you're referring to. I know this might be put you on the spot a little bit, but with that in mind, with the role that you've played all these years, it has been, I guess if I look at David, I see a lot, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a connection to infinite intelligence, or he doesn't download a channel, but he's obviously done a tremendous amount of research over the years. And there's two things I want to bring up. One, I look at it, there's a parallel between the two of you, where you've been tapped in since the womb. You have multidimensional memory, other planets and all this. And of course, the daily communion that you have and the information that you share with humanity. Both are very, very full, voluminous, just huge information. And so I see that parallel. The other thing that I found really interesting, and I'm going to lead into a question, is that when we were talking, you said, I used to watch David Icke, and it was actually the same story that I've told for myself. I think a lot of us did when we first, woke up. Our levels of waking up are like, oh, wow, that's mind expanding, because if that can be true, then what's on the other side of the spectrum? Now, you said it's interesting, though, Todd, because in the recent months, I've noticed there's been a softening with him. Like his delivery is less radicalized. There's something in him that's softening, which to me, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. And I know that level of intensity. I've seen it. I've also seen his level of inspiration in terms of humanity and the human being, or the human hybrid soul. So my question is, and I wanted to share that information as a backdrop, is if you could ask David Icke a question, what would it be?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and you can take a moment to think about it if you want to.
Well, just to set the stage a little bit, yeah, you're right. I mean, somebody talked about David Icke almost a couple of decades ago. And I remember the first time I listened to him, he had some really good information, and he's always had, because he's done research and so forth. The only thing I noticed that it was very polarized, but at the same time, I realized that polarization was necessary for the collective, because that's where they're at. And I guess a lot of it was where David Icke was at too. So, so even though I listened to a lot of his stuff in the beginning, just to kind of, oh, great, he sees it. There was a lot of different levels of confirmation. However, he would get into the rant and so forth, blaming these individuals and that and whatever else, which was, okay, a lot of people, that's what they are looking for, because they are looking for a victimizer, because a lot of people are in victim state.
Yeah.
Because when the information is shared, it's like, oh, that's why my problems are there. Well, this is why the world is the way it is. It's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, or whatever, right? Because we weren't aware enough to see that they are just playmates, just aspects of ourselves playing very polarized roles, right? So I kind of, after a while, I started to, step outside of that, and I haven't followed him for years. But then on London Real, he came up a few months ago, and near the end of the conversation, I started noticing what you call the softening, that all of a sudden we're love, and that's what we need, and whatever else. And it was like, wow, he's actually starting to see a bigger picture. So my question is, David Icke, what changed? What level of understanding did you just access to realize that this is just a game that we're playing together, and there's no right or wrong or good or bad, and that everything is really love, truly creation, and also creation that we are choosing to dissolve that no longer match our experience? So what changed for you? What came about to actually allow you to see a different perspective where you were less polarized? Because even the presentations are showing, but it's not them,
Yeah.
the roles that they're playing.
So, great question. That's a great question. I can't take credit for it, so when I ask them, I'm going to tell them who came up with it. So, and in regard to, and we'll maybe segue into something else, but another one of the prevalent narratives that has a pretty wide expanse, and I'm talking about not just from your typical conspiracy circles or disclosure, but also from some prominent individuals. Many of them aren't like household names, but I would name, for instance, Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And that is the purported threat of AI, transhumanism and all this stuff, and I guess where I'm going with this is, how do we marry that how do we bring that? I mean, we know that everything out there is a part of this experience, and we can't just push it away and act like it's not there. You know, at the same time, because we're not going to do that, we're going to get to know it better, if you want to put it that way, and we're going to work with it. It's pliable. It's the same energy we are, and we're going to create our reality, our journey, or whatever you want to call it. What can you tell us about AI and the narrative that's out there? And I'm not looking for like, oh, this is how it is, and I know you're not going to provide that, but I mean, just in terms of a perspective that maybe we haven't heard. You know, I mean, how is that presented to you from your team? And anything else you could add to it?
Well, yeah, from the team at this point in time, AI is ultimately going to be utilized as part of our experience. Now, like any AI, it operates on the programming and the intent of what that AI is. AI is going to be used in a fashion, in a productive way. I mean, no matter how it goes out at this point, it still plays a particular role. Is to really to facilitate us to do certain things that as humans we find are no longer necessary, but at the same time that can be done so that we have more free time to play. Now, so the rolling out of the AI, it really it's a marriage of where it comes into place that it's going to serve us, to support us, rather than, you know, coming into play and kind of dwarfing or redirecting our lives and so forth. Now, even the AI that we have installed in us, which we call the ego, okay, that was programmed to play a particular role. And that was programmed to help project, support, and to navigate us in this inverted matrix. It is also was programmed never to let us see outside of the inverted matrix, or to, you know, really stream into the inverted 3D and 2D state of being. So that AI was particularly designed for that. But every AI can be reprogrammed or taken out of obsolescence. Now, the AI for humans are not really necessary, like the ego is not really necessary unless we're playing the inverted matrix, inverted 3D, 2D, because we already have a very powerful, capable brain or mind, if you want to call it that has no limits, and it doesn't need upgrading because it upgrades constantly on its own, where the AI is more limited. Now, when they were injecting the AI to interact with humanity, meaning that they'll run certain tasks, monitor, and so forth, it will depend on the humans to program it in such a fashion where it's actually being of service, more in alignment of how we want to utilize it, rather than behind a particular agenda. Now, some of it has a particular agenda that is being put together for it. However, that can be reprogrammed, and it is intended to be programmed. Now, one of the concerns that was set up and sent and says, well, AI is self-learning, it can take over, and it could override us, which, you know, some of the science fiction movies, which are not all that science fiction, have projected the fact that AI ends up taking over and sees that all of a sudden humans are viruses or whatever that is. However, my brother, sister souls, which are all brother, sister souls of everybody that I've worked with as the, our brother, sister souls in other dimensions that are working with the team, as referred to at this point in time, had said very clearly, if it gets out of hand, will have access to turn it off so that you can go in and reprogram. We have the flip the switch, whatever they call it. What do they call it? I can't remember, like a reset or something of that nature, where they can actually reset it energetically and frequency. Now, we could do it collectively to a certain degree, but if we need assistance to that, so that even if it rolls out at first, because the thing is, one of the things that we need to understand is that we are not here to create a reliance on AI. It's like anything that we do. We don't create a reliance on something being there. You could say, okay, I'm going to implement this because there's certain facets of the game of life that is not something I really want to pay attention to. So therefore, I'm going to put that in the hands of some control structure. For example, a lot of the manufacturing eventually, once we step out of the need of a job and money, which we are going to do, and we have full intention to do, because life is not about working in that respect, where you're going to do a job so that you can make money so that you can survive. Really, it's about us doing what we love to do, our offerings and so forth. So there's going to be some manufacturing still required while we're still playing the game, as we're going through the transitional part, that will be something that humans may not enjoy doing it. So then you start to create more or utilize more of the robotics and also the AI to control the robotics. But, there'll still be humans that will actually monitor and whatever else. But at the same time, they'll do it because they love to do it and so forth. And there's not the focus of, oh, we can't bring this in, or we can't utilize this and so forth because, we're going to lose 10,000 jobs or 1,000,000 jobs or whatever. Because that won't be the case any longer, because it won't be necessary. Because we didn't come here, as much as we came here to play whatever is the current game so that we can advance from it. But the thing is, if we are keeping the old method of this inverted matrix, inverted 3D, 2D, where, we grow up, like we're born, and automatically the parents' responsibility and everybody around us is to condition, program us to make us become one of them. What are we doing? We're taking a free spirit, fully open, offering to the playground, and we're now conditioning them to play a very particular game. And then they go through the media exposure, then they go through education, then they go through the working environment. For what? We're conditioning and preparing them for an old world where we had to earn our living, earn whatever. That's not our natural state. Our natural state is we're already, the moment you come here, you already have full access to everything, and we create an environment where it supports it. Like this whole idea of poverty is manufactured. That we have to have jobs is manufactured. That we have to play with money is manufactured. All based on supporting that inverted matrix, inverted 3D, 2D state. As we're stepping out of that, then you're going to notice those things are not required. So you disassemble it, you take it out of the equation. So AI will play a role, however, it will be to support our journey so that we have more free time and so forth, not the original agenda where it controls us, it limits us, it monitors us, because a lot of the AIs are being used. Some of our platforms, social media platforms, some of the other stuff where it basically decides, who gets to say something, who doesn't, and monitors any words that come out, and, whatever it is. That is the polarized negative version of usage of AI, but AI can be used in a very powerful way.
Yeah. And, thank you. And you, since toward the end of last year, you really, as we started engaging on the show regularly, you were constantly updating us a few weeks in advance. The theme of the month is this, and the theme of the month is that. The longest period that I can recall that we had went beyond a month, which was the integration period. And if I'm not mistaken, that I guess came to an end around mid-September. And is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So and since that period has ended, we haven't discussed it. But I have noticed that there was a huge ramping up the latter part of September, first few days of October, particularly in at least my own experience with the physical version or manifestation of the energetic field in terms of what we might call divine union, within ourselves, being physicalizing couples, also androgynous beings that carry that frequency. I know Morgan received some intel in regard to a pulsation, a convergence of these types of energies in certain sacred spots around the world, then a pulsation outward to infiltrate it into the realm. And then let's see what comes next was kind of the way I went. From that period, which I would say was maybe 2 or 3 weeks, there was a period of the last 2 or 3 weeks, which seemed to have been, up until a couple of days ago, 10 days prior to that, a pure hell for some people, at least in certain parts of their day. It was all over the board. It was physical. It was emotional. It was mental. It was irrational. It was rational. It was just everything in, the whole kitchen sink, right? You've mentioned that 2021, and I know it's early. Well, you've mentioned it here too, disclosure and transparency. What lies in between? Because the last 3 to 4 years that I can recall, this period of time, beginning around 10/10, certainly by 11/11, into the winter solstice, into January 1st, into the 11 or January 11, it just was like a springboard. It was like like the drum roll, like before the cannon gets shot. Is there anything you can, any guidance or any information you can share with us as to what lies in between now and the end of the year?
Well, the theme that started in October, the one word that I can apply to it, because it kind of showed up that way, is called intensification.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is actually going to carry out till the end of the year. We do have a very interesting launching that will happen around the 21st of December, which is the next solstice.
Yeah.
That I don't have the specifications from it at this point in time, what that's going to be, because they wouldn't share it with me. Usually that's the case of you're going to squeal it on touch or someplace.
Yeah.
Or the fact that a lot of times they're still work in progress. I'll go with the work in progress because I do have the capacity or the tendency to kind of say things prior. So that's how sometimes they've been a little restricted. But the theme of the intensification has been because of the fact that, yes, it's going to incorporate emotions. It's going to import energetic. It's going to activate, physicalities and so forth. But if you notice that the pulses that are the setup right now, it's every other day we have a new wave of pulse coming in from the galaxy, from the sun, from different arrangements that we have, including the center of the earth. So what's the purpose of all of that? Well, yes, the intensification is, yes, intensifying polarity, but at the same time, breaking down the rigidity of that. The intensities is also allowing us to get into the state where we stop fighting and resisting ourselves. And we still do that very powerfully, because a lot of people turn around and say, and I've heard this many times, and I've said it myself sometimes, you want to go, okay, just give me a breather so I can kind of give myself the opportunity to kind of ground myself to sort things out, Well, it's not about that. And that's one of the things that was made very clear. This is not to sort anything out, because we have a tendency to default in the old method of sorting things out. If we keep it moving and pulse after pulse after pulse in levels of intensities, then we never get a chance to settle in with any particular energy, because it's really about fluidity. It's about flow. It's about movement. Because right now, we are redesigning, and you can't stop and say, okay, let me smell, the roses of what I just finished creating. No, you create and move, keep creating. And each creation is an add-on to the old creation or what you started to create. But at the same time, you're never getting attached to the creation, and you don't sit back and just, because the programming tendency is, you create something and then you're going to sit back for the next little while and say, okay, now it's time for me to just observe what I've created for the next 6 months or month or week or whatever it is. No, the thing is, right now we're in such a fast track and such intensification for us to be able never to get to a point, and never, when I say never, I say it loosely, but to get to a point where we actually stop and say, okay, so the thing is, it's not about stopping and breathing. It's about breathing along the way. It's about being fluid with everything that's going on, and whatever plays out, even intensities. For example, people have a tendency, when you have something trigger, an old memory, an old response, an old emotion, the old time, the way it was done before is we look at it, we spend some time in it, let me see where it's coming from, and so forth. That's great. However, we tend to take a lot longer than necessary. Yeah. Energetically right now, it's not about working it out in that slower fashion. It's about observation, acknowledging it, loving it, letting it go, because it doesn't serve. And it's really fast. And the thing is, because it's so many of them are coming back to back, and not only the energies, but the triggers, you don't have time to stop and do each one. I mean,
no, you don't.
It's got to be like, come on, let's go.
It's a good time to keep your mouth shut. It really is. I mean, it's like, yeah.
Well, the whole thing is too, we don't want to get into the blame, and this is kind of, it's not our nature, but it is our program, where something happens. Well, you tend to find someone to blame.
Yeah.
Well, the point is not about blaming anything, or even who played the role. If they push your button, whatever it is, it's just like, oh, great, fantastic. Oh, I got this going on. All right, I acknowledge its presence. I appreciate its presence. I love you. I free you. I let you go and move on. The point of all of this, as you're moving along and just dropping it, you're not going to have a tendency to keep dragging it. Oh, let me carry it a little longer. Let me see how it feels later on, or whatever it is, which is our old pattern design, which, it's not our natural design, but that's what we've adopted. And this is why, because to prepare us for the following year, and part of the intensification is also for us to clear out as much as possible, because when more of the disclosure comes into the surface, the last thing you want to do is go into victim state. The last thing you want to go do is go into blaming someone else or feeling shocked, because you want to get to the point, and this is the point of the intensification, to see this as a game. It's a fluid, playful game. We are here to participate. We are here to transmute it, transform it, expand it, and whatever else together, and see that. So you're basically going on a fast moving ride, and that's what we entered. Now, even though we have been on a fast one, but October, as you've seen, has been much faster, and November and December is about that. So that's the answer I can give you.
Yeah,
I gave you all the other stuff is so that we understand it, what we're looking at from now to the end of the year.
So, and I don't know. So, in terms of what we put before us, like we're in the internet age. Everyone's got a phone in their hand. YouTube videos, Facebook videos, posts, the whole 9 yards, mainstream media, whatever. Are we getting to the point now where it is more advantageous to us to just shut some of this down? And I don't mean the handhelds. I mean in terms of what we're watching. Like, for instance, I told you about the situation I had before with watching these police brutality videos, and then the next thing I know, I'm pulling out of my driveway and a cop pulls up and blocks me and says, "What are you doing here?" And I live here. I created that. I realized that. I did my best from that point on not to watch those things anymore. And then I started questioning myself, well, why are you watching this? And why are you watching that? And why are you watching this? And my ego, I guess like everybody else's, has some great rationale that sounds really good and poetic and pretty. Yeah. But I'm starting to get the feeling that the level of responsibility is getting, if not has gotten to the point where we are going to have to walk our talk. And like they say about integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. But I guess what I'm saying is, are we getting to the point now where even in the small, intricate moments woven into our daily life that we're holding ourselves accountable, and that because of the level of expansion, those things that we watch, those things that we put before us, those things that we entertain, are contributing to the collective experience, and until we regulate that, and say focus on something higher. And I'm not trying to ask a leading question. I mean, is that what's happening? Are we being held accountable to higher and higher degrees, even with these things that might seem mundane and uninfluential in terms of what's happening collectively?
Yes, yes. That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought it up because the thing is, you'll notice if you're watching, for example, what you just said about, cop brutality or whatever else that's going on and all of this stuff, as much as we think that it's not affecting us, our subconscious mind is not only recording that, your ego mind is using it so that it actually keeps reminding you that things are bad and that, why are you thinking of this higher state of being when the world's all messed up? And so the point is, and you will also notice as you're watching some of this stuff, it will lower not only your frequency or even how you feel. And some people say, well, it changes and activates emotions, maybe a fear, feeling insecure or feeling whatever, right? So the thing is, social media, the majority of it, I'm not saying all, the majority of it is still all projected. And it is the most alluring because the ego loves you to watch polarization, watch and be drawn to, look at what's happening out there. Look at this. This is important to you. And this is why sometimes people get on, say, Facebook or anything, and they're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and they can't stop. It's like an addiction. It's like whatever. Because the ego is going, oh, we got to see what's the next thing, and it always likes to look at the stuff that is very polarized because it builds ammunition. Here, it's feeding the AI within you. So the point is, social media is a very powerful tool on both aspects to keep you stuck in the stuck state, and also to help you access to certain people that or information or whatever that is much more aligned with the true nature of our beingness and the changes that are going on. So social media is a powerful tool. And a lot of people say, well, social media has to be responsible for humanity. Well, no, we're the ones that are responsible. The thing is, if you're not going to watch those things that are very polarized, the people watching it will reduce. And the thing is, too, you're affected by it because what you transmit at that point in time, the moment you say, oh, look at what those people are doing, that's wrong and whatever else, you're now feeding that into the collective and supporting that state. So it's a little harder to it. And this is one of the other reasons, it ties into what we were just saying a few minutes ago about the fact of the intensity, so that in fact it becomes more and more uncomfortable for us to even sit there and watch that stuff. And this is the thing, not only that, just to pay attention. I'm just going to share this. I'm not saying just for you, everybody. This is for everybody. It's not, I'm not just, as much as I'm having a conversation with you, it doesn't mean I'm pointing everything to you, because we're all doing it. However, what I was going to say is the fact that when we are watching all of this stuff, as we're going through the experience, it's really to pay attention to how it feels for you when you are watching it. Because what happens is you become much more selective, and the intensities are going to be more in your face type of thing. So it's a matter of when you're looking at it, you go, oh, how does that feel to me? You stop for a second. How does that feel? Yeah, it's not even the question to ask yourself.
So
do I support that way of life? Is it really in alignment with me or not at this point?
Yeah. So, I'm not going to answer that one. I'm talking about this comment I'm seeing.
Oh.
So if you look at it from a general standpoint, and the individual's impact / responsibility to the collective experience, it's almost as if you're perpetuating the narrative, the false narrative, by giving yourself to this stream, be it police brutality or the protest or whatever. Because if you look for it, you'll find it. We all know that. I think another way to put it, maybe to just kind of bring some clarity and see where you go with it, is I hear people often will say in terms of their news feed that they have modified their news feed so they don't see dead animals, or they don't see this, or they don't see that, or they don't hear this, or they don't hear that, so that when they come on and start going down the news feed, it's more of an looking for inspiration, looking for frequency that will help them to fortify their field. And I guess maybe this is another version of that approach, and it's just not quite as simple because that ego is a very good talker and very subtle. And so, but I guess that kind of answers my question, because if that has something that I've heard people talk about many times in terms of controlling the frequency of their news feed, then I guess at some point the light bulb will go on for all of us, and we'll begin to make better choices in terms of what we put before us, even if we feel, or their ego tells us that, hey, it's okay to watch this stuff, you're not affecting anybody. But the truth is you are, because you're perpetuated in yourself and as within without.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is the ego is going to say, well, you need to know what's going on, or that it's not really going to bother you. Because I've heard it from people too, and the sense is, no, I know it's just a movie. I know it's just propaganda, whatever it is, but I'm curious to watch that. Well, again, yeah, as much as you're curious, what's making you curious? Is it your higher self? Imagine, if you connect to your higher self and you say, okay, higher self, do you want to watch this? Do you want to be exposed to this? And the higher self says, no, we want to really connect to that higher frequency that we are, here to perpetuate. But the ego mind is going to tell you something totally different at this point, because the ego mind is going to say, hey, wait a minute, we gotta see what's going on here. We got to keep up with your thing. The other thing I wanted to throw out, if you have an addiction to the polarized world, what I would recommend, okay, just as a suggestion, if you're so addicted to it, then do a major exposure that you're going to look at as much possible stuff as possible that are polarized and whatever else, to get to a saturation point where you finally say, enough is enough. Because what's happening, you have a contradiction going on. You have these pulses coming in, and you have all the stuff that lowers you. And what happens, because I've had people say, well, when I put myself into that, I get depressed. I go, why? Because the fact is, because that becomes a saturation within yourself, and that uses your every aspect. All your resources are going into that direction. So what's happening? You're actually creating you're creating an energetic shift with yourself, and you're isolating yourself from all the other stuff.
It's like being, I love this guy's comment, OD on it, but it's like being in solitary confinement. Years ago, and you probably remember this, back in, I was a kid though, but it would have been like, I want to say like maybe mid 70s, early 70s, when the whole thing came out against big tobacco and all that stuff happened, and they came out with remedies, and one of the first one was the Schick Smoking Center or something like that. It was on TV all the time. They'd have these commercials. You want to quit smoking? Come to the Schick Center, and we'll do it. I found out years later that what they did, obviously they don't still do it, but that's what they did. They put you in a room and have you smoke with no ventilation, cigarette after cigarette after cigarette, until you were saturated with it and you just had enough. So it's the same thing is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a good point. You get to the point you become sick of it in a sense, or it becomes so overwhelming that you finally say enough is enough, and that's it, right? And then even if it's offered at any point in time, again, you'll be less inclined to go down that path anymore. And if you have to repeat it, you repeat it. But the thing is, getting little bouts of it tends to support the addiction, if you want to call it.
I think you notice that. You notice that with other people and with yourself. And that is, it does lower your mood. If you're watching stuff that seems irrelevant, it's almost like a testament against uh, I'm saying, let's just say for me, if I'm watching something and I'm ignoring the fact that I know this affects my chemistry, which then affects the collective, but I'm watching it anyway, it goes against what I call I am soul. It goes against my sovereignty. It goes against the utilization of my power for the highest and best good for all. And I guess the reason I jumped into that was because it looks like to me that what's happening here is we're being held, well, and we're doing it to ourselves, but we're being held accountable in more specificity in the deeper and deeper pinpoints, the intricacies of our existence, that no stone is left unturned. And not only is that happening, but it's happening very, very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So very cool. Now, so we got intensification, and this thing that happened with this integration period, which must have been 6-8 weeks, something like that you called, which was right on the money. We left for Sedona on the 15th, and I think that's right when it ended. And then this period came that I described earlier. And then after this surge, there was this, I don't know if that's integration or pre-integration, but this whole period that we've had the last couple of weeks. I'm thinking, I don't know the answer at all by any means, that these patterns, there doesn't seem to be a set pattern anymore. Not even if you say what used to happen in 2 weeks now happens in 2 days or 2 hours. There doesn't even seem to be a rhyme to the reason anymore. It's just like, wake up, hit your knees, say your prayers, whatever you got to do to show some gratitude and whatever, however you do it, ground, whatever people call it, and be on your toes and be conscious of yourself all day, every day, because that's pretty much what it takes. I mean, I don't know anybody that's not feeling, I've not talked to anyone that's not feeling something or another at some point during the day that's challenging.
Absolutely. It's not in any way, shape, or form, exclusive to certain individuals. Some will feel more of it. Some will utilize more of it. Others will still experience it in different ways, in different intensities, because they're not ready to jump into it in the same fashion. However, everybody's going through some form of transformation. And the thing is, too, I mean, we have to look at it, and I think I just saw a comment earlier about, veganism and so forth. In regards to that, too, what we consume is also changing for many of us. You've probably noticed that a lot of people are having a difficult time eating what they normally used to eat, especially if there's a lot of shifting going on, because the body itself is demanding more of high vibrational food that is the most updated. And when I say updated, because it hasn't gone through a factory, and it is not through a different sentient being of sorts that actually alter the expression codes and so forth. So because if you take a plant, for example, plants are growing and it's always constantly upgrading from not only the energy from the planet, the energy, the vibration that the water would carry, and also the sun rays and whatever else is coming through. It's upgrading all the time. And so when you're eating right from that plant life type of offering, then that actually carries the most updated codes and so forth. However, once it's actually dwarfed and gone through a factory, or it's actually consumed by an animal, and then you're eating the animal, then it's changed, because the interpretation of that sentient being, animal, whatever it is. I'm not demonizing anything at this point in time, but what I'm saying is that you'll realize that you'll be drawn more and more to things that are the most current, because we want to be current all the time. And this is one of the things, the reason that we're letting go of a lot of these old programs, patterns, responses, and so forth, is for us to stay current. And that's why the intensities are also much more. And like you said, there's no consistency, because They're all different, so that we stay current rather than, have this automatic go back to that older state. It's not about staying there in that. Oops, what did I just do? I did something.
Well,
I dropped my pen.
yeah.
But anyways, so when you're looking at all of this, as all of that is playing out, it's keeping the most current state constantly, so that you do not just kind of, okay, I'm going to sit back, or I'm going to let some older patterns. For example, many of us, say you're making a change in your life, and you say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I do things that are supportive. Let's take it to physical. I'm going to go do some exercise. I'm going to eat some good food, whatever it is. And then later on, either that day, next day, or whatever else, then now you go into a binge of junk food, for example, just as a label, right? So we get caught up in that pattern. Say, oh, I've been good all week, and now it's the weekend, so I'm going to, do what I really like and whatever else. Well, you're going to notice your body and also the energetic, how you feel about whatever. Maybe, ego perception that, this is tasting good. You need to reward yourself. This is why you're having this or that, whatever that is. But you're going to feel it more, that the body's rejecting it, or it's having a tough time processing it. You're going to also notice your energy frequency changes. You may not feel good. You may have some other sensorial experiences. This is also part and parcel of the changes that the body's going through, because, like as we said, and it's been said before by others too, is that, we're going through a transformation in our body, where we're going from the carbon base to the silicate and to the crystal, but at the same time we're re-encoding our operating system. Look at it this way: the more we become our natural design and blueprint, the more you're going to not be drawn to what you've been conditioned to be drawn to, because our true blueprint does not eat food, and if it does, not for sustenance but for an experiential experience, it's basically only designed for fruit. So that is the tendency, the direction it's going anyways. Yeah, it's going to still give you allowance to do the transition, but it's going to become much more prevalent, and many more people are saying, I'm having digestive problems, I'm having issues where, things I could consume before I can't consume anymore, or anything of that nature. That's because of part and parcel of the changes that are happening, not only physically, but also in our operating system.
Yep, there we go. Fiona, thank you for your questions and your remarks. Where's the medical evidence? I think what's being discussed here is what people that have been coming on the show talking about all year, and that's that at the end of the day, their body's talking to them in a way they've never heard before. And not everybody's receiving the same information, because everybody's coming from a different, a different journey and a different makeup. But this is certainly true, Franco. I mean, people have been coming on this show. I've been feeling it, in that my body's speaking very plain to me. It's not that I haven't had a cheeseburger here and there, but when I do, I am told, enjoy. You won't be doing this very long, or, which is rare for me, to go get a steak and eggs, because I don't really eat red meat. It's like, hey, guess what? You're going to go have a steak and eggs right now, because you're about to go through something, or you just went through something and you need to replenish, but don't get used to it. You know what I mean? I mean, the body is, we talked about this before, or, in the last couple of shows, but the body's really coming into play now. Like, it is the command center. It's no longer all that stuff up there. It's like the Merkaba. It's like literally,
Well, the thing is, the question that came up, how is it scientifically proven that, some of the stuff I said, that the body not only is going through those changes, but also, our makeup of what the body is actually designed to consume. That information is out there. It's been out there for a very long time. However, a lot of it is suppressed. And when I say suppressed, because the educational system still wants to support the old modalities of having all of these different food things coming in, because the original design of all of that was to have us consume what we're not designed to keep us in a poor functional state, and to support an older state that was modified at some point in time. But scientifically, even medically, if you're not indoctrinated by a belief system of some sort, and you actually do research, you see that our digestive system is really not designed to digest, meats and eggs and dairies and whatever, all of that stuff, or even vegetables per se. Again, it's easier, but eventually that's because even if you look at it, the makeup, we don't have the hydrochloric acid to break it down properly, so it has to use metabolic enzymes. I mean, that's well known, and the metabolic enzymes are what keeps your body to regenerate. So the more you have to digest food, the faster you activate the aging process, because you're basically taking away some of its life force and the regenerational capacities of the cells. That's all been proven for years. I mean, I've done a lot of this research, and when I went vegetarian in 1985, and the only thing I kept was sometimes I would have eggs, sometimes I would have cheese, because it was kind of my programming at that point. But in 1991, I went vegan 100%. And then a few years after that, I went fruitarian and lived on that for 8 years. And then I added back in a few things back to the vegan part. So, I would have some vegetables time to time. And, but, my thing is you eat fruit and juice, vegetables, and the other stuff, a few of the grains that we plugged in once in a while was just kind of a sensorial experience. But most of that I can't even consume now anymore because the body changed continuously. But the point of all of this is that this information has been there a long time, but it's not on the mainstream, because the mainstream is designed to keep you in that old designed modality. And the thing is, a lot of the suppression, allowed us to stay in that state. But that's one of the things that's coming out further and further now, ever more than ever. And the thing is, if you're in your natural diet and you're in a higher vibration, then illness and other stuff really doesn't get activated unless it's a soul experience that you choose temporarily for a period of time to kind of create another purpose for a different directional point. But that's about it, So
far out, man.
A lot of stuff that people said, oh, there's nothing to back it up, nothing to back it up. There is, like even some of this stuff that's going on right now, the propaganda things about weather changes, pattern changes, and all that stuff. There's 97% of the scientists believe in this, right? That's not true, because if you actually look at the scientists that are not programmed or bought in or whatever, don't have to say a certain modality, they will tell you totally differently. Well, research shows this instead, and that's going to upgrade anyways.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just kind of the old narratives. But this is the thing. This is what the disclosure is going to do, and what it's already been doing for the longest time. And this is the same thing with David Icke. I mean, he's been into the disclosure world. Yeah, he was still perpetuating polarity at that period of time, but that's changing, and it has changed. And something has triggered that for him. But what triggered? He's going through changes like all of us. You're aware you're stepping into.
Well, that's a good point too. That's why I always. I never give, total or, put all my eggs in a basket, because that for me represents a closed-mindedness, and what I'm referring to is like what you're talking about. What's the information that's put out there? You could take, for example, COVID and quarantines and masks over the last few months. Whatever's getting the most press, I really look at it as not what they're trying to tell me that's truthful, but what they're not telling me that's truthful, like the truth behind the lies. And I also recognize that is there's some uniformity to that, not just in the mainstream media, but in what they call the alt news, or even some of these other platforms. So, it's just another lesson or another path to a higher level of discernment, I guess. But yeah, it's we're still on this soul highway. It's both SOUL and SOLE, because when you get right down to it, it's you and the universe, right? No matter what the situation is, no matter what timeline or dimension. Now, do you have? Are you having any more of your workshops? The workshops that you get that you can connect through your website.
Yes. Can I say one closing thing before I go to that?
Yeah.
So there was a point that you had mentioned there, so yes, you got the mainstream providing a certain narrative. Again, there's a purpose behind that, because we have to utilize it and say, okay, is this reflective to what I truly know or feel within myself or not? The alternative is the same way. The alternative, in a way, may disclose, open up certain things, but at the same time, if they're projecting polarity, they're still a work in progress. It's not the most refined, but at the same time, they will show you an alternative, and then you still have to use it yourself, like you said, the soul self, SOLE, to kind of say, okay, what's being shared this, how could I internalize it and utilize it as part of a higher knowing? So you're coming in, taking the sources, but you're now crystallizing it within yourself with that deeper understanding. So that is always necessary at this point in time, because I've seen a lot of alternative stuff that may bring certain points, but a lot of times there's a different interpretations and it may be much more advanced or expanded from what do you call it, the conventional media, whatever it is, or whatever. But at the same time, you have to look at it and say, okay, well, I need to bring this all in within myself and see how do I utilize it, and how does it support me in the direction I'm going, or anything of that nature, because that's really what it's about. It's not about saying, okay, I drop one, I go to the other. It's like, okay, this is not resonating, but at the same time, I'm open to this. But at the same time, now I have to look at what really resonates for me, what is as part of parcel of that. Now, to your final question there, that was workshops. Yes, we will be having another workshop in November. I don't have it ready yet, in the sense of it will be a later part of November, which will be also part and parcel of a lot of the stuff that's going on right now. So we're putting all of that together. So really, right now, that's active is the Advancing Consciousness series that we are going back to 2 times a week instead of once a week. So we are going from once a week this week. We're including one on Saturday. So we're back to 2 times a week. We're not going to go back to 3 times a week, but at the same time, we're releasing the podcast, which will start on Wednesday, which will come out 1 per day, and covering. So those are some of the resources that are available. I will be doing shows like with yourself and possibly others along the way. And then once the workshop is ready, we will post that out and let people know about the workshop. So yeah, stay tuned, really, to stay tuned and kind of update. I'm looking forward to you having your show with David Icke, and then I think I come on a few days after that, so that we can play with some of the things that are going.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. So we'll see you again in I want to say around 3 weeks, and that'll be, I think, the day after David Icke. So we will have some things to talk about, and we're also, you're going to be coming on twice in December, so we can get. Early December, we can get a little snapshot of what we're dealing with. And then after we go through the fire, in between space between the equinox and New Year's or whatever, I think we got you scheduled for the 30th. It's always a pleasure. I would encourage everybody to, check out Advancing Consciousness, and on YouTube, Facebook, and all the other venues that you have, which includes a website, which I believe is franco.denicola.com. Is that it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
yes. And I would suggest to people is that as you go onto the different platforms, we also put a link in to sign up, join the community by offering your email. Sometimes what's happening with the email is that way you get notifications of what's coming up and so forth. And at the same time, because social media is a little fussy at the moment, and it's been fussy for a lot of people at this point, where, some stuff shows up, other stuff doesn't show up, and things of that nature. So the email still seems to be something that, still get through without being intervened in any way. Because I've had people say, well, I didn't even realize that, you had another episode. Well, yeah, I usually try to post it a few days before, sometimes the day before, and the odd occasion, depending on what's playing out, it would be a few hours before. But in most cases, they're coming out, and so it's just paying attention. So it'll be we're going back to the Tuesday, Saturday for the Advancing Consciousness series, and we have one tomorrow, and then the podcast will come out daily, and that will be, I will post it on Facebook, and also, of course, it also goes on Twitter, and it goes on LinkedIn and so forth. And I think somebody puts, we have somebody, I've forgotten her name at this moment, but she also posts it sometimes on Instagram too for us,
cool.
at least a notification for it. But and I'm also excited for when we get to go on your channel.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that somebody put up and first and foremost, thank you, Marina Govier, for bringing the website to fruition. I'm not sure when we're going to roll it out. The Ike show's the 18th of November. I would think maybe we're going to roll it out 11/11. We could roll it out in the next day or two if we wanted to, but we're not rushing anything. But we are going to work to 4 channels very quickly. And one of those channels is going to be the Franco, DeNicola, Kimberly Ross, Advancing Consciousness, or whatever it ends up being called. That's going to be highlighting Franco and Kimberly's work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with replays and lives. So we're real excited about that because we feel at Soulogy, we feel that your work needs to get in front of more people. And so we're really hoping to integrate a lot of audiences there and introduce people to you and to other contributors. So yeah, we're real happy about that. I guess we'll see you in 3 weeks post David Icke. And thank you for the question. I'll be sure and ask him that question. That's a great question. And I'll let him know that you sent it to him. So maybe we can have a threesome at some time or a foursome.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I mean, I've always wanted to connect with him and have you on there along the way.
Wouldn't that be cool? That would be another, and let's see how it goes. Everybody put their best intentions forward, and maybe we'll have a recurring thing where we can start to bridge these communities and create more of a singular, zero-pointed, middle-of-the-road vibration for us all. But thank you.
Yeah, no matter how we look at it, we're all on the same path and the same intent. We just do it differently. But the thing is, a lot of times when we collaborate, we create something that's even grander, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
Put it that way.
All right. I'll see you in 3 weeks, Franco. It's always great seeing you. And give Kimberly a third eye kiss from me. And I'll see you later. Yeah. Peace out, everybody.